Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. Today we've entered into the third week of the protest in Islamabad. What is the politics behind the government's failure to act? Is the government acting with restraint to prevent any untoward circumstance, or is there more to it? Let's talk about that. Let's also talk about the Delimitation Bill, the fact that it's pending in the Senate, and there seems to be there have been attempts by the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif again and again to get the former President Zardari to play ball with him, to discuss things with him, to come on the table with him, but that is continuously being refused. We've seen the statement of Bilawal Bhutto also. We've seen what Zardari Saab categorically seems to be saying no to all the overtures by the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Let's talk about the implications of that for the democracy in Pakistan, for the politics of today. I have with me Barrister Danish Iftikhar, who's a political analyst. Thank you for being with us. And Irfan Ghauri Saab, thank you for joining us, Irfan Saab. Barrister Saab, to start off with you, like I said, we are continuously being inconvenienced. The normal person on the street is going through a terrible time every day, and I'm sure you can agree to that. We've seen the government's restraint. The government hasn't, acted out. They continuously have said that they would like this to be to happen with peace, and the results not to be anything too drastic or untoward, against. But nothing seems to be happening. How do you see the situation?
Well, I think, first of all, this is the worst traffic congestion and the worst prevailing conditions which are present in the Twin Cities. And
right.
Commuting to and from Islamabad from Rawalpindi is a nightmare.
Right.
And a car which is supposed to provide you with freedom or, freedom to move, it has been removed from us, or a motorbike for that purpose. Right. I think there are several aspects to why the government is not acting or not doing anything to end this protest in a manner otherwise which is not peaceful, in another manner, by force. I think the first aspect is the political aspect.
Right. And
we know that this issue is very sensitive, the issue of finality of prophethood. The government has seen that this party, Tehreek-e-Labbaik Ya Rasulullah, contested the elections from Punjab, from Lahore, NA 120, and also from NA 4, right. and managed to secure a sizable number of votes.
Right.
So any method which resorts to the use of force, and if someone dies in that in that instance, that right. will be someone like Mumtaz Qadri would be born out of that. Right. Incidents, if that were to happen. So this is one thing which is very worrisome for the government. It does not want to create an issue which, as we saw previously what happened in the Lal Masjid, we saw that people died, and subsequently the country saw a resurgence of the Taliban, and previously suicide bombings did not happen in Pakistan, but that phenomenon also rose, and things like those occurred. And right. we managed to alienate, and we managed to further abandon those people who were readily, they could have become in the streamline and come to the mainstream, but they were isolated for that matter.
Right.
So this is the first aspect. The political issue is very important. But what I think is very important is also that although the government thinks that if it acts by force, it can be politically it can be an upset for them in the next coming elections, but by not acting itself, that is also politically hurting the government, and I think the government should be aware of that matter.
Right. And let me come back to you. Let me go to Irfan Saab. Irfan Saab, do you agree that the government, by not acting out, like Bas Saab is saying, it's actually, that itself is going to prove to be a problem for them, their popularity, because certainly people are being inconvenienced. And this is a problem for every day, for every person coming from to and from, like we've been talking about, Islamabad and Pindi.
Yes, the population, the population of this city now, and hundreds of thousands of people, they commute between the two cities, and that was the very strategic location. They carefully chose that location.
Right.
I think here, now not taking action, showing restraint, this is something because the government is aware that because the Interior Minister he had been saying that some of the people in this city, they are armed, and in case of clashes there can be loss of lives, and like Mr. Saab has said that we have seen in Lal Masjid case,
right.
that earlier everybody was emphasizing that the then government that you should take action. Once the action was taken, and then the backlash and all that. But here I think the another weakness, other than what will be, I mean, the after effects in
Irfan sir,
terms
let
of...
me just interrupt you there. I mean, this is really like, you know, this is symptomatic of a huge problem for the future. Considering the fact that anything that is popular, on the one hand, you know, a segment of the society may think of anything as popular in the future. And for that, you know, a number of people may come and you know, sit at any place and hold the government hostage, for example. Do you think the government will become paralyzed then? It will not act?
There will be no end to that. I agree with that. I mean, the demand they have, I mean, they have been demanding that whatever the negotiations, I mean, they will start after the law minister, he resigns. And the issue, I mean, it's a very sensitive issue and everybody is sensitive about that. We are, as Muslims, we, I mean, we all, I mean, are sensitive about the prophethood, the finality of prophethood of Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But the thing is, that law, it has been ratified. And before, I mean, it was passed, all of you, I mean, the educated class, they all know that that law was part of the electoral reforms bill. And that electoral reforms package, it started, I mean, this committee, it was a committee which had representatives from all the parties represented in the parliament. So there were 25 members and they have hundreds of meetings. And then before the draft law was finalized, I mean, after it was finalized, all the members, they signed on it. That means all those people who had signed, they must have read that if there was any change made. And then the assembly passes, the Senate passed it. I mean, and the demand like that, that this minister should resign, that means if there is some other issue, you will be coming up, any other group, like you said, they will come up, you know, on some other road and they would say that this minister should resign. So this is not the way that the government can work. Then the government made a committee of ulama. They tried to mediate. I think though no headway was made, and the head of the committee, I think he's left for South Africa or somewhere. So the High Court, they have given the orders yesterday. Even the Supreme Court, they had hearing, and the remarks and the order passed by the Supreme Court. And the report submitted by the intelligence agencies, it's, I mean, it's clearly said in those reports that it is more of politically motivated thing than the religious.
So you think that there is a danger that this segment will become a force?
If not the force, but at least I think they are trying to capitalize. They are trying to capitalize because this started with Mumtaz Qadri Saab's issue, and after that, I mean, they had in the previous two elections, we had seen that since they have started contesting in election, we have seen that they have some vote bank, though smaller, but still it is not, I mean, as small. Like in NA 120, they had, I think, 6,000 or something votes, and in NA 4, again, around 9,000 votes, which is a good number of votes. And through using those, I mean, sentimental, you know, when it comes to religious sentiments, the people are more sensitive about that. And if you can recall, you know, in 2002 elections, when Americans invaded Afghanistan, at that time we had MMA, and they capitalized on that invasion, you know, and we had seen the rallies and all that. And they came up with, you know, significant number of seats in the National Assembly, and they formed the government even in KPK and Balochistan, you know, a coalition government in Balochistan. I don't see, I mean, this sort of success, but still I think they are trying to capitalize that.
Right. But in your opinion, Barrister Saab, going on to you, why, you know, why has the Supreme Court, for example, you know, the Supreme Court now and the High Court, why have they been, you know, why has there been a failure on their part to get this, or you know, this implemented then? You know, on the one hand, of course, we blame the government, but then of course the judiciary is now involved, the Supreme Court is involved, the High Court is involved. Why?
Well, I think firstly and foremostly, any order which the courts of this country gave, no matter if they are giving a legal order and you know, it has to be implemented, but still the repercussions or the fallout of that order, or to implement that order, the fallout will be borne by the government. You know, Mumtaz Qadri, he was executed on the order of the court, and that execution happened, and the Supreme Court confirmed the execution.
Right.
But still, the brunt was borne by the government, and the government was blamed for that. And even now, you see the language being used by people who are involved in this dharna. They blame the government, they blame the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif for executing Mumtaz Qadri. So this is the difficult thing. Even though the courts of this country might give an order which will be legally sound and everything will be in accordance with law, but still the fallout has to be borne by the government. So that is an issue which I think the government is thinking about, and that is why it is not acting as in accordance with the judgments of the courts. Right. So that is a test for the government. But I think that eventually the government will have to do something, because inaction leading to the elections, if nothing happens, there are so many things which have to happen before the elections.
But if the government doesn't do anything, we've heard the fact that the government has now cut the supply chain as far as the supplies to the protesters is concerned. How long will they continue to sit if that does happen and the government doesn't act, in your opinion?
Well, eventually I think something will be done. Something will be done out of maybe the frustration, maybe the dharna people, maybe they will make the first act, and the government will have to move in, the police and the law enforcement authorities, they will have to act in self-defense, and then there will be something will happen or a clash will happen. But I think something will be, something is inevitable. Right. The situation cannot go as it is right now. It will be broken, and this impasse will be broken, and something will happen eventually. Right. The issue is that how these things will turn out. As what happened in the courts the previous day. The court said that you don't have to use the bullets to disperse the protesters. You can do that by using perhaps tear gas, for instance. But the thing is, and the issue with that would still be that as intelligence confirms that those people, some of them are armed, and some of them are armed with sticks, and some of them have even guns and something like that. So if you use tear gas to disperse them, what will happen if the first shot is fired from those miscreants, which the intelligence agencies are saying that they are present within the dharna people? So that is also a very difficult task to accomplish. Yes, we have now these days we have water cannons, we have other modes to address riots and these kind of things. But the issue is what happens if the first shot is fired from them? What will the reaction be, and how proportionate the reaction should be to prevent the situation from burning out of control?
And whether it can be proportionate in those circumstances.
That will be a test.
Irfan sir, we're talking about the fact that these people are armed. Why? And we're talking about the intelligence reports, we've been talking about whatever they submitted in the Supreme Court. But why did we not know at the stage when these people were assembling? Why did we not know when they started to march? Why did we not know when they started to gather? I mean, this isn't, in some sense, this is a failure of the intelligence, or is there something more to it? Is someone behind it who perhaps that the government is fearing? What do you think about that?
I think aside from the conspiracy theories, it's a fact that it is administration's failure. When they started from Lahore, I mean, it took them days to come to the city, right. Islamabad. And in Islamabad,
did they not know that they were armed at that point?
They should have known, because intelligence agencies, that is, I mean, their role. That is their job to know all those things, and also, I mean, the motives of those, whatever such processions are. And the other failure was when they reached in Islamabad, we have, the government has a court order that such processions and such public, gatherings, they should be held at a specific place, and that place is they call it Democracy Ground or Democracy Park, or the parade ground, right. Which is just next to the venue where they are sitting. Right. They should not have allowed them to sit there. I mean, that was the time, because and this should be the this should be the practice that any such public meeting or
right,
protest, it should not be allowed to enter. Like we have seen, and the present government, they earlier had experience, the Imran Khan's
Right,
case,
right.
then along with Tyrol Qadri, and they were sitting in, next to the Parliament House, and we had seen, the situation was so tense that any time, it was like seemed that the whole system is at stake. So, and since you have the court order, but the thing is that when it comes to, something favorable to the governments, they allow it to happen, inside the city.
Right.
So you cannot have, two different.
But this is certainly not favorable to the government.
This is not, but I mean, earlier this had been happening, that even the religious
but the failure
clerics.
in this case, I mean, is it attributable? Certainly, it's attributed to the administration, like you said, but also to the intelligence agencies. No,
Of course. I mean, but the thing is, intelligence agencies would be giving you the reports. We're not sure whatever the government, what the reports they had
but
been given. And similarly,
the
courts, they give you the orders or whatever, but implementation rests with the administration,
right.
the executive.
So either way, it will come to, the blame will come at the government's door.
Yes, that
whether
is
they
true.
act or they don't act.
They don't act in both cases. It seems like that, and I fear that I mean this is going to continue. I mean perhaps for the next week, and the frustration in the people. I mean those who travel. I mean I'm regular because daily I have to come from Pindi to Islamabad, and sometimes it takes you 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and from that traffic jam, you coming from that traffic jam and all that, people are becoming psychic, because your tolerance level and all that. So journey which was 30 minutes journey, if it takes you daily, it's not matter of one day now, it's been it's entered in the third week,
right? And also anybody who's coming out, I mean, you think at least twice, thrice, do I really need to get out of the house? Is it that important? Most of us would prefer not to get out at all unless it's absolutely essential.
And the loss of fuel and, the time and all that, if you calculate all that, and the impression that,
your capital,
city is paralyzed for 3 weeks because of, this dharna, the impression that is going, everywhere around the world.
And with a country that is, involved in CPAC, it has huge, it's a huge project. It has, so much it is at stake. But at the same time, what kind of a message are we sending across to the world?
The CPAC is all about connectivity, isn't it?
Right.
And if you don't have connectivity, if you have disconnectivity, you're cut off from the rest of the whole country is cut off from the capital. It's a big thing, and it's not a matter of a few days that we are hearing this.
Right, of course. Now
billions of rupees have been lost in lost income through excessive burning of fuel. Through what about the time that you lose, and what about the school hours that children are losing? And I was appalled at hearing the people talking in the dharna that what happens if someone does not go to school, they will fail in the exams. I mean, it doesn't matter to them. So this is the state of affairs, I mean, they're going to that low depths that you can't even argue with them. So that is, a problem for the government. This will be a huge challenge for the government to negotiate with these kind of people who are using demeaning language, foul language, and, with respect to the issue, as my brother said, we are all very sensitive to the issue, and we agree about the finality of prophethood. But this does not mean, I mean, that personality, he removed a stone from someone's path if someone was walking through that path, so that the person does not, get hurt. And what are we doing? In the name of that person, that the person because of which the whole universe was created. And, in that name, we are, troubling people. We are troubling those people who are going to the hospitals. We are troubling those people who go out to work and spend money and earn money and spend it on their children.
This is a face of religion that perhaps the world is seeing, which perhaps is not sending the right message, like you said. But Barrister Sahab, we've been talking about what do you think is behind the whole. The fact that the government is not acting certainly, is one side of it. But there have been theories about the fact that perhaps, it is somebody else is behind this to derail the government, to put pressure on the government, to show a face of the government as incompetent. How true do you think that is? Is that just propaganda, or do you think there's more truth to it than just rumors?
Well, if you study the history of these groups which are participating in the dharna,
Right.
and if you see how, steadily and gradually how they they brought up the issue of Qadri's death, and then, they entered the mainstream political system, and then they contested elections from NA 120 and managed to steal, or whatever you might call it, to grab or, get the votes of which were predominantly of PMLN. So if you study, there seems to be a whole pattern to this thing.
Right.
I mean, there seems to be, if you follow the crumbs, you go to that house which says that something fishy is going on inside there.
Right.
So I think there is some logic to
But
that reason.
do you think they have support?
But, probably they do in some certain quarters. But what I think is very important is that the government should be powerful enough to stop all those conspiracy theories.
Right, right.
Because the government is all important, the government is all powerful, it has all the resources of the state. It should be able to quash any kind of...
But it should, right. But
Maruf,
Irfan Saab,
if
do
you
you
allow
think
me,
it's... Right, I'm just coming to you. Let me also go on and ask you the question that I've been meaning to. The point is that, the government is all powerful. It is supposed to be all powerful. But in this case, do you think it's somebody more powerful than the government behind this kind of, protesters, or behind trying to derail the image of the government? As, we've heard talk by the former Prime Minister, he's come out again and again and said that, it's really a part of a conspiracy. Do you think this is also part of that same conspiracy, or no?
Maruf, it's difficult to, assumptions aside, but this is also a fact that since these religious matters, they are so sensitive, and you have seen, there is also a failure of our civil society and political parties as well.
Right.
Had the government, an overwhelming backing by the political, we haven't seen, even the mainstream political parties coming out and, giving the government, sort of, a support on that issue that, okay, it should be vacated. I haven't seen the opposition parties, they, there are meek voices, but not the support that we should be getting. Similarly, the civil society, because these, religious parties, the issues they take up, and the people are, because in our case, the tolerance level has gone so low that the people are not even ready to listen to the, logical voices. So, besides the government, it's also the failure of the civil society and the other political parties as well. But that they should be, in the parliament, even, today, some members in the Senate, they requested the chairman Senate to play some role to end this dharna, and, with the smile, he's, he adjourned the house. Because nobody wants to, enter into such controversy.
Or maybe, of course, maybe the fact that there is this, like I earlier talked about, the fact that there is this deadlock, so to speak, between PPP and the PMLN, and certainly the chairman Senate is part of the PPP. In that sense, the government, like you said, the political parties, the opposition parties, we haven't seen PTI Act, certainly this is a tradition that has been set by them as far as, the protests are concerned. But we haven't seen them come together. We haven't seen the kind of response from the PPP that should perhaps have been there. And, there is perhaps because they all want a slice of, there is also political opportunism. There is also, for them, they want to see, of course, the failure of any other political party is a gain for them. So that is, the politics is being played, do you think, on this issue also?
Yes, the politics and also the parties are worried about their vote banks because, because these propaganda tools, once it comes, we had seen even sometimes if anybody tried to, bring some amendment which was logical amendment, in some religious clause related to religious laws. And the backlash they had faced. I tell you, few years back, one of the, currently she is a senator, a very capable lady, a lawmaker. She bought a bill in the National Assembly. At that time, she was member of National Assembly, and the backlash she had, the fatwas she was getting, and similarly, because We have seen that, and in other cases as well, that our political parties, they are
They're only looking
tolerating
for
all
their
those,
own.
just fearing that
There
because
will
in
be.
the
You think it's more about a fear of the clash or unpopularity on their part than really just politics, and looking for their own gain? And
both. And in the past, we had seen that our, state institutions, we had been patronizing these religious people, and now they are so strong. That earlier we had been seeing that these special, this particular sect, we assumed, the people assumed to say that they are very peaceful, but we have seen, what has been happening, with this sect. So gradually, we have seen that, we have been radicalizing the society.
right.
Earlier, we had been seeing that, those who were, who entered into, initially from Afghan jihad to
Right,
Kashmir jihad,
right.
and now we produce those jihadis, and now we have been producing these people. So it's unfortunate that state, if not involved, at least they have been tolerating them. And
And when we get that kind of a comment or we get that kind of criticism from out of country, of course we of course rightfully get very upset. But I guess we have to look
but
at
these
our
are the
own
realities.
country, right?
They are the realities, and we should admit that this is, even though they might be few thousand people or few hundred people sitting there, but the impact they are creating,
Right,
that is
certainly.
tremendous.
Let me go on to Barrister Saab. Barrister Saab, let's move on. Let's talk about the Delimitation Bill. I mean, there is deadlock on that issue. Like I said, the former Prime Minister constantly seems to be making overtures to Zardari Saab, and that there is refusal from that side. How far do you think this will continue, considering the fact that we need this bill to go through for there to be timely elections, in the sense that even after it's passed, there is a 4-month period for all of the procedure to take place. How do you see things?
Well, I think firstly, I don't think former President Asif Zardari wants to be seen in the public with meeting with Nawaz Sharif, or maybe even attending his telephone call.
Right.
Because he perceives that, he thinks, in his opinion, I think Nawaz Sharif is no longer the leader, and he will no longer be able to participate in the politics of the country as he used to in the past. And plus, the second thing is that he thinks that elections are too close to be seen shaking hands or to be answering phone calls of his, political enemy, as he perceives.
But regardless of his opinion on the popularity of the former Prime Minister, the fact that if they don't cooperate as far as the Delimitation Bill is concerned, considering that the PPP is in majority at the Senate, how do you see, how will this impact parliamentary procedure? How will this impact democracy?
Well,
Considering the fact that it has clearly been said that if that does not happen, then there has to be perhaps, an increase in the tenure of the parliament or some other measure,
That would be, I think, that will be a catastrophe. I don't think that should happen in any case. Elections should not be delayed. They should be held on time. And if for any reason Asif Zardari does not want to talk even to former Prime Minister, I think that the former Prime Minister should delegate all his powers, even the party powers, to the elected Prime Minister, as he is right now, Shahid Khaqan Abbasi. And he should have all authority to deal with People's Party and all its political force, and to make this bill pass through the Senate. Because if we don't move ahead from that, if we still clinch onto this thing that, that the former Prime Minister has to meet the President Asif Ali Zardari to make a headway or to make any kind of progress in this matter, this might never happen before the elections, because as we see, even Asif.
But it's certainly also in the interest of the PPP and Asif Ali Zardari Saab and all the political parties for the elections to be held on time, and I think they've agreed on this, that they want the elections to be held on time. So there is that goal on the one hand, and then there's this refusal to discuss things with the former Prime Minister on the other, as far as Asif Ali Zardari is concerned. How do you see that, Irfan Saab, in your opinion?
Maruk, it's I think People's Party. I had a story today. I mean, I talked to them. What are your reservations, actually? One segment in People's Party, they believe that through this bill, Actually, the government is trying to, delay the elections. This is one segment within the People's Party. The logic they were giving was that if
But how is the government
that's I'm going to tell you, because this was strange for me as well when they told me. They think that if this bill is passed now, it will take 6 months to complete the delimitations, which is in accordance with the 2017 population census. So it's going to take 4 to 6 months to complete that. And in case the political situation deteriorates, the government might dissolve the assemblies earlier. In case of dissolution of assemblies earlier, Constitution says that the elections should be held within 90 days.
Right.
But since the bill will be passed and constitutional amendment will be made that the new elections should be held with new delimitations, and those delimitations are going to take 6 months. So the government will get the time and to galvanize and all that. But the thing is that, that can be a possibility and we're not sure. But the thing is that these political parties, they should show enough maturity.
Right.
That we had seen, these wrangling within the political parties, it resulted into, derailing and what we, still, the people talk
we
about.
Don't see.
These electoral reforms, the process, it should have been completed years back, 2 years back. It started in 2014 and now we are, it's 2017 is ending, and still we have many things, including this delimitation bill pending with the parliament. And also, in Senate we had seen, even not only the it's in Senate, though People's Party is the largest party.
So why not just let the bill go through?
But there are other parties as well. So sometimes, because I cover Senate as a reporter, and we have seen that sometimes members from PTI, MQM, they were mysteriously absent. All the political parties. I'm not blaming them. You can. But the thing is that once you all have agreed, and before agreeing to this bill, because earlier when there was a deadlock, People's Party said that it should be, it should go to the Council of Common Interest, and the meeting was held there and everybody agreed there. Then the assembly has passed.
And then there was the 10th November deadline, which is passed also.
Yes, that was passed. Then the Election Commission said, okay, maybe by 17th of November, that has been passed. The more you are delaying it, that means you are increasing the work of Election Commission, and at that time, because election is an exercise other than war, it is the most, arduous exercise any country has to go through.
Right.
So to make those elections credible, these political parties, they need to play their role, and instead of doing politics on these issues and having their own bargaining,
they just need
they have to act maturely. And even the senior parliamentarians, they have been raising questions that if it's delaying, that might cause delay in elections, and delay in election means, you can well imagine, since already we have so many theories going making rounds, so that will be really catastrophic.
Right. Do you think that the Supreme Court may get involved if this happens? In your opinion, how do you see that as a barrister, as a lawyer, Danish sir?
Well, I don't think the Supreme Court can intervene and make the Parliament do whatever the Parliament has to do.
But there is nothing to prevent somebody from going to the Supreme Court to get them to perhaps give a direction of sorts?
Well, that would be, in my opinion, that would be negation of the concept of separation of powers. The Parliament cannot be forced or coerced or ordered to do something. And that is the reason why we have the, the concept of parliamentary democracy and supremacy and separation of powers. But what can happen is, which, my friend also mentioned, that someone, if the elections will not be held in accordance with the 2017 census, then the elections will not be held on time, on proper time. And what will happen to the in the between period, in the period where there will be a vacuum, in the interim period, And this is what many people are talking about, and they're discussing it openly. Like we see, a candidate from Rawalpindi, he often gives predictions and he says this will happen, this will happen.
Right.
So he's also talked about this thing that something is going to change in December, and whatever these kind of conspiracy theories, these are going to grow in number as the elections come nearer, and as the government is unable to pass this fresh delimitation bill from the Senate. So to prevent that from happening, I think it is very important, because as was said, that the Council of Common Interest, it held the meeting, and this meeting was held at the behest of the People's Party. So I don't think there should be any sound reason for the People's Party to now backtrack from that, because they agreed in principle that if this was passed by the Council of Common Ideology, so that should not happen.
Right. But, as far as our political, the realm of politics is concerned, you don't think that, perhaps PTI will play a larger part as far as, dealing with the issues are concerned? Certainly, they're not the largest opposition party as far as the Senate is concerned, but we haven't seen them really show any more promising, they haven't shown any kind of reaction to this bill. They haven't shown any positive reaction. We've only seen the same kind of back and forth, slandering or talking back and forth about whatever is wrong with one political leader to the other. Not really any positive outcome out of that.
Well, I don't think that PTI is a very mature party as of yet. I still believe they are still in the nascent stage,
right.
and they are growing as a political party. They are still, getting their claws into the mainstream political system of Pakistan. And that is the reason why, Imran Khan, he gives such interviews, which, proves to be an embarrassment for his own party. Like what he said earlier, that, it's thanks to Allah, we were not given a government in the center in 2013 general elections. This is what he said to BBC. And furthermore, he also said that, that we have wasted our whole tenure because of the dharna. He said we wasted 3 years because of dharna. So that was also something which was an immature kind of a statement, and which backfired for them. Right. And so I believe that, like for instance, they are claiming just about some months ago, they were saying that we want general elections in the whole country.
Right, exactly.
But how can you go for general elections when you don't have this delimitation bill? And this Delimitation Act,
they've been saying
based
that
on the
until very
consensus.
recently. This is a constant demand by the PTI. So, that was early elections, and then with this bill pending, certainly it's.
And how can general elections take place? And secondly, what about the caretaker government? They haven't given any name for the caretaker government. The process hasn't started yet. The parties haven't been consulted yet. This will also be a process which will take some time. So I think
but that could just be their way of pressurizing the government. Certainly the dharnas had done it. Let me go to Irfan Sahib. Irfan Sahib, how do you see the political situation vis-a-vis the PTI, considering that their voice has been the strongest, regardless of the number of seats they may have?
Before going to that, I mean, elections, it's not, I mean, technically I tell you, since I cover election matters for a long time, technically we have the delimitations which were based on, on the basis of which the previous elections were held. But the thing is that your constitution says that once the census is held,
right,
then fresh delimitations should be done, I mean, should be conducted in accordance with that. But there was there is another clause there that once the results of the census are officially notified. Here, the controversy was that Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, which conducted these census, they are saying that they would be able to complete the final results by April. So April is the time when they can complete that. And by that time, if the election commission starts, fresh delimitation process, it cannot complete, within the, because the elections, if they held on time, they will be somewhere in by end of July or early August.
I think, right.
So to accommodate that, the new bill, which is being called 24th Amendment in the Constitution, not only the number of seats have been reallocated according to that, and in that Punjab has, you've seen that Punjab's share has been reduced, 9 seats have been reduced, but also a clause has been inculcated under which special provision will be given that provisional results will be made the basis for the delimitation.
Right.
So technically this is that. So in case these delimitations they do not take place, still you have the older delimitations, but
Right.
somebody can go in the courts and take that constitutional provision which says that once the census has been held, then the fresh delimitation should be held and the elections should have been held. So
Right.
that can be a possibility, but still, I mean, but the thing is, once you have, because we have seen this census was held after 18 years.
Right, right.
Ideally, it should have been held, after 10 years.
Right.
And already it was late, and we have seen that, I mean, the size of the constituencies that has been changed. So why not to have the fresh delimitations when the exercise, the initial exercise has been done. So you have the basis, and you should be
right. Exactly. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, Barrister Saab. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us, Irfan Ghauri Saab. As far as the politics is concerned, certainly there is a time when all the political parties must accept the national interest as supreme, regardless of what may be favorable to them as a political party, as the opposition party, or as the party in power. It is time that all the political parties come together and think about democracy, think about the larger interest of the country, and think about making sure that that democratic process is not undermined in any way. Let's hope that that happens. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.